Well, I want to thank Bob for hosting us here and everybody else that's come out of quarantine, at least for the evening. As a way of introduction, some of you I've never met before. I grew up on the Central Coast and moved to Lompoc when I was 10 years old. And the circumstances behind that is my dad was a Bataan Death March survivor. And he died when he was 47. He was back into farming after a career in the military. I lived in Kingsburg, California, and we moved over here after he passed away. And I have military/veteran stories galore. My mom worked for the Veterans Service Office for the County of Santa Barbara, and my sister was a nurse at the Veterans Hospital in Los Angeles. And so those kind of issues are important to me, and to tell you the truth, it has a lot to do with why I am running. After I graduated from Lompoc High, I went to UC San Diego, got a bachelor's degree, no job prospects, and I came up and started working as a seasonal laborer in a factory called Union Sugar in Santa Maria. I worked my way up to industrial relations manager, and then the county was giving the business community all sorts of grief, and we formed a coalition to fight against the county's regulatory overkill. And the organization I work for is called CoLab. It's a coalition of labor, agriculture, and business. I've had almost every union in the region on my board. It's nonpartisan, but it's conservative in terms of business, taxes, and regulations. And I've been doing that for 30 years. And as an adjunct to that, to get the word out to the community, we started a radio show and we started writing op-eds. So I've written 2,000 op-eds, which is the equivalent of 15 200-page books, but one page at a time is basically the way that worked. And our radio show now goes from Ventura to Paso Robles. We're on 3 stations, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and San Luis Obispo. And so we try to educate people and serve as a government watchdog, a business advocate, and things like that. And to make a long story short, about a year ago, my wife, Linda, you're always in the back. Come forward a little bit so people can see it.
Hello,
this
Linda.
Is my wife, Linda.
Hello.
Thank you. She's a mother of 7 children. She homeschooled all of them, actually through college practically. Even though they went away, she bought their class books so she could help them out when they needed it. And anyway, she's been a blessing. We've been married over 30 years. And we went to see, what was the the congressman that we went to see at the Thousand Hills Ranch? Oh, that was it was a fundraiser. God, I'm going. Pardon? Devin Nunes. Devin Nunes was up there. This is a year ago. I'm going to blank there for a minute. So Devin Nunes was telling us what was going on in the country at the time. And a few weeks prior to this meeting with Nunes, how many of you know Tim Tremblay or Richard St. Clair? Those guys came up, they're best friends. Tim Tremblay emailed me, said, I want to talk to you and I want to meet you. I love your news press columns. So I told him, well, I'll meet you in Buellton, and we went to breakfast up there, and the first things out of their mouth is, we want you to run for Congress. And I told them, exact words, I'd rather get a root canal. Okay? And then 2 retired pastors from down here, Tim Philibosian and Brian Cox, contacted me and said, we think you should run for Congress. Well, that still didn't convince me, but I thought there's a pattern going on here. Well, after we listened to Congressman Nunes, my wife gets in the car and says, I honestly think you need to consider running. And the reason why was the threat to this country. Now, this was a year ago. And so, because I've interviewed over 10,000 people on my show. It's an interview show. I interview 4 people a day, 20 people a week. I know what's going on. Plus, my mentor in life was a Harvard and Swarthmore professor Naval War College professor. I've got one, thank you. And so I've had a view of foreign policy for 40 years via that mentorship and the shows I do, and plus on the national economy, taxes, regulations, socialism, and all the rest. So we knew why we were doing this, and one of our first TV commercials we produced was, and this was we produced this back in January or February, was it people tearing down statues. And people said, well, why is your commercial about tearing down monuments or tearing down statues? And we said, well, there's an undercurrent threatening this country with an insurrection, and it's got different names or different facets depending on your worldview or the level of analysis. And there are 3 distinct threats to the United States of America that are now coordinated and I'm going to say cross-contaminated, if you will. One of them is anarchists. Antifa is the example of that. Then there are socialists, the ones that do not want to let a crisis go to waste and want America to be a socialist country. And the third are globalists. And the globalists don't want independent nation states. They would rather have individual nations subservient to regional unions like the European Union, and they want the individual nation states' specific interests to be subservient to this global agenda. Well, for instance, China wants the global agenda, but they don't want to share power. They want to be the one superpower left in the world. You have the socialists that feel, and this has been going on, this theory, there's a guy, professors called Caldwell and Piven, there was Saul Alinsky, there's a number of people over the years that believe the only way to take over America is to wreck it first. And then you have the anarchists that want no government at all, no control at all. They want an autonomous zone from coast to coast. And all of these players are all working together right now. And for instance, this very week, there was a program called the Breathe Act. The Squad, you know who the Squad is? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Omar Tlaib. They've introduced the Breathe Act. They're calling this the Civil Rights Act of 2020. But it doesn't have that much to do with civil rights. They want to get rid of ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcement. They want to get rid of the Drug Enforcement Agency. They want to make crossing the border, decriminalize crossing the border. They want to defund police departments. They want to defund the Department of Defense. Again, because they don't want an independent nation state. And there was a quote, I just did a show this week. With the college professor who always keeps me in touch with what's going on in college campuses. A UCLA professor, a political science professor, was reading the letter from the Birmingham jail to his class. Martin Luther King's famous letter, Birmingham jail. He read the letter, and in the letter had the N-word. He read the letter as it was written. He's under discipline from UCLA for reading the actual words of Martin Luther King. Well, the department chair of UCLA said this: the American democracy will only last if white people will give up their power to people of color and multi-racial groups and multi-gender groups. That is what this agenda is about. White privilege, white, elitism, etc., etc. All the dead white guys' statues have to come down. and even anybody that was associated with them, such as Frederick Douglass, for crying out loud. Abraham Lincoln's statue was defaced. The World War II memorial was defaced. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was defaced. We are witnessing an insurrection in America. And there's a lot of people think, oh, well, this will go away. But this has been in planning stages for decades. And my opponent, Salute Carbajal, and every Democrat in the House of Representatives had the opportunity just a few weeks ago to endorse and pass a resolution that condemned the police brutality involved with the death of George Floyd, but also condemned rioting, looting, and an unequivocal statement against defunding police. Not one single Democrat would support that resolution. And what the problem with the Democrats, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. The young people, AOC, for instance, is one of the top 5 fundraisers in the Democratic Party. And most of my guests are telling me she's gonna challenge Schumer for US Senate next go around. She beat Joe Crowley, who was gonna be the next Speaker of the House after Pelosi. Do not underestimate these people. Do not underestimate them. Because one of the things that's going on, we think, well, they're lawbreakers. Do you know how many courts have dismissed the charges of the people they caught doing these crimes against businesses and everything? They're dismissing these cases over and over and over. Plus, they've raised bail money for these people in states so that they know they're going to get out of jail, they'll be represented, and the odds are their charges are going to be dropped. They are gaining momentum as we speak, and Congress is not doing anything to withstand it. This truly is an existential threat to this country. It is an existential threat because these kids and these people are darn good friends of mine. There's a judge up in Santa Maria, and this guy is the most Catholic person I've ever met in my life, and I grew up Catholic. His uncle was a cardinal. They had 6 kids, we had 7. They had 4 girls and a boy, we had 4 girls and a boy. We've known this family for almost 30 years. This kid went to Holy Cross, now he's going to Santa Clara. Caused a huge storm in Santa Maria this last week. The sun urinating on the American flag. The son of a judge raised in a devout Catholic family, scholar athlete in school, going to Catholic universities, took a picture of himself peeing on the American flag. And the Facebook just lit up, and I said, look, you know, I know these parents, because people are blaming the parents. I said, I know these parents, but you have to understand the phenomena that you send your kid off to a school, they're not teaching them that Abraham Lincoln was a good man. They're not teaching people about the miracle that created this country, that we were supposed to be a nation of laws and that our rights derive from God, not man, and these rights are unalienable, and that we live in a constitutional republic where the law rules, not the mob. Unless you have a super majority that can change that constitution, every single individual in America has unalienable rights that a majority can't take away. They're not being taught any of that. They're being taught that this country didn't start in 1776, it started in 1619, that it was always and only and will forever be an institution of white privilege at the expense of people of color, i.e. systematic racism And when they are systemic, whatever is systemic is probably the right way to say it, systemic racism, which means in their terms, what they mean by that, the institutions have to be torn down because they can't be saved. Everything is built into the system. So in this bill, and it hasn't been introduced yet, Section 1, divest federal resources from incarceration, policing, and ending criminal legal system harms. They call community policing a harm. They call ankle bracelets oppression and a form of slavery. They want decarceration. Section 2, community safety utilizing funding incentives. What they're going to save from police departments and the military is going to go back into the community. And what they don't understand, or they don't want to understand, is my day job is serving as a government watchdog. For instance, in Santa Barbara County, the county, which is a $1.1 billion government entity, runs the jail for the entire county, and they provide police services for most of the county, with the exceptions of City of Santa Barbara, City of Lompoc, and the City of Santa Maria. Their budget for the police department and the sheriff's department and the jail is $165 million. But the fund for drug, alcohol, mental health, public health, and social services is nearly $450 million a year. It's not that we're not spending money on social services, public health, and welfare, and that doesn't include the direct payments to people. That's just the cost of the county administering those programs. And so when they say, well, we need mental health, we've got $100 million of Department for Mental Health countywide. We have $100 million of public health and alcohol, drug, and mental health. There's nearly 900 employees or 1,000 employees in those departments alone. We're spending an absolute fortune on that stuff right now. Now, I guarantee it's not working, but that's another subject for another day. What I can tell you is getting rid of police, for instance, kicking off a school resource officer off the campus. Does that mean either COVID or this new movement solved Columbine or Sandy Hook? Did it solve the threats of 9/11? Did the Mexican drug cartels go away? Did MS-13 go away? Did the Bloods and Crips go away? Or the 18th Street Gang go away? Or Norteño or Sereno or Mexican Mafia go away? Do we have an idealized worldview now that all problems could be solved by putting dead white guys off of their pedestals and white people in their place? All the problems will go away? Folks, we're in an existential crisis because young people have been brainwashed, and they have been taught that when the young kid peed on the flag, his title for his post was, "I love America." This is what we're up against. I want to return representation to the Central Coast. I don't want to go back there to represent a party. I want to go back there to represent us and respect for this country. I still believe this country is the greatest country on earth. And it was never a perfect country. It never will be a perfect country. Our original sin was slavery. We tried to remedy that with the Civil War and the 14th Amendment. We tried to remedy it again with the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act. We have more work to do, but there's also a fundamental breakdown in the inner cities and the family structure that has to be addressed. And all that I can say is, even though I had no intention of running, one of my friends, there's a three-generation family that's been involved with CoLab. The granddaughter said, even if you've not planned this, it looks like you've been prepared for it your entire adult life. So I want to stand up for America. I had 3 black roommates in college. I went to a school based on equal opportunity placement. I think I was the only white kid that was an EOP student there. And I had an emphasis on minority issues in my classes and when I went back home. I care about what's going on in those inner cities. I was raised by an immigrant mother because my dad had passed away. So I understand some of the struggles they're going through. I want to help them, but I want to help them by building up and preserving America, not tearing it down, not destroying it, and certainly not starting over with these people in the lead. Folks, this is one of those campaigns. We have to win this. We have to win back the House. And I can tell you that Salud Carbajal has a 100% identical voting record to Nancy Pelosi. Even though he claims he's bipartisan, I don't think Nancy Pelosi would go out there trying to sell her bipartisanship, but he does, even though his voting record's 100% the same. And the squad, his voting record's 95% with the squad. He is not who he purports to be when he's gripping and grinning here on the Central Coast. He's got over $1 million in his war chest. The COVID shutdown has hampered my ability to raise money. This is the first event we've had since February, live. We've been raising money, but not enough. We've been producing videos. I think you can go over after we're done. I think you'll be able to watch some of the videos we've done. Some of them have been viewed 20 or 30,000 times. So we're doing that to reach as many people as we can. We need money to do TV. And then also to get our walk campaign, don't go door to door and all that. And whatever you can do to help us, whatever you can do to multiply this message and echo this message, our lives are at stake. If America goes, Western civilization goes. Most of us had Western Civ in high school and we're thinking, God, this is so boring. Why do I have to take this? Now I know. Now I know. One of the things I talk about slavery, and I don't want to keep you too long here. Let me just give you an example. Slavery was horrendous. It was evil. No ands or buts about it. But it was common practice the world over. There were black slaveholders of blacks in Africa. There were Muslim slaveholders of whites in the Middle East. Some of the Irish came over as slaves. The Japanese and Chinese had slaves. Everybody had slaves. It was evil across because people fought, conquered, and enslaved people. Well, the truth is, it was Western civilization that put an end to it. Yes, they were guilty of it, but a man named William Wilberforce spent 50 years. There's a book and a movie called Amazing Grace. He spent 50 years to put an end to the British slave trade and to get slaves freed in the British Empire. We followed suit. So yes, Western civilization was guilty of that sin, but Western civilization gets the credit for ending it in their environs. Whereas Boko Haram, remember Boko Haram? Those girls were kidnapped to be slaves, either in the form of a wife or a prostitute. They're slaves. They were literal booty, like a pirate's booty. It's still going on in the Far East. Children are sex slaves. In Afghanistan, there's this thing called the Bachi Boys, where little boys are kidnapped as sex slaves. It's going on to this day. No, why don't they want to talk about that? Why don't they want to talk about the violence in Chicago? I believe Black Lives Matter in Chicago as much as they do in Minneapolis. And I'm either too stupid or too brave. I'm going to talk about this stuff. Because I feel the Republican Party has not been taught speaking the truth to this. I will, and I've been doing it for 30 years. If you will help me, we can win this thing. I would not be trying this hard if I was just a token candidate. We can win this. We need financial support, moral support. We're trying to get into churches, civic organizations, any speaking engagements. We're doing Zoom meetings. Anything you can do to help us get this message out. And down here especially, people have to believe that not only can we win, we must win. Thank you.